Yeah, I don't know what it is.
We up?
Yeah.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any minutes and reports received and filed?
I have a June 2017 collector fees file.
Okay. Commissioner committee liaison reports, upcoming meetings and events.
Oh, we got our Avenue HQ comedy thing tomorrow night for the United Way. Chamber Connections Thursday. Radio Friday. Taking care of that one?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't want to.
I will do it.
Okay. You you'll do it.
I will do it.
And BOE Monday, so, and the fair starts Monday. Not it.
Troy Howard this afternoon. Tonight, we have regional board meeting. Thursday, the Coconut Republican Club. Chris Estes is going to be a speaker. Friday, Saturday is Jefferson City Fire Department golf tournament. Okay. Presentation from invited guests, Williams Keepers, to present the 2016 audit.
Thanks. We're actually going to go through the summary report because I know nobody wants to go through the nice big thick report. So I'm just really going to hit the highlights of the audit and other reports, and then if anyone has any questions, just need to let Kristen or me know. The county issues what's called a comprehensive annual financial report. One of the reasons that this is so thick is that it includes additional information beyond what's required under accounting standards. The two sections that are additional are the introductory section and the statistical section. The statistical section is interesting because it gives 10-year trend data on revenue, expenditures, and a lot of different information for the county over the past 10 years. So to me, it's a sign of excellence in reporting on the part of the county that they take the time and the effort to produce not only the required report, but the additional information as well. The actual financial statements include the auditor's report, all the schedules, and then the footnotes. We issued what's called an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. What that means is the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with governmental accounting standards. Modifying what that means is anybody can look at your financial report and rely on both the numbers and the disclosures that are in there. So if citizens go out and look at the report, or bonding agencies or grantor agencies, they can look at this and rely on the information that's in there. So obviously that is a good thing. Management is responsible for the production and presentation of the financial statements. The county auditor's office does prepare all of the schedules that with all the numbers. We actually prepare the footnotes, but the county auditor's office does go through all the footnotes in detail and then approves the final footnotes. So everything in there is management's representation. When we audit an entity, we use our judgment, figuring out what we're going to do every year. That judgment's kind of based on how our understanding of internal control. We look at the account balances. We look at the volume of transactions, the dollar amounts in different areas to determine where we're going to perform our audit procedures. And it's based on where we think something might go wrong, and that's where we focus most of our time. In the end, we feel we did enough work to give that unmodified or clean opinion. We also evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies. We look at the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates and the overall financial statement presentation. Just a reminder too, another reason that this is so thick is there's actually two complete sets of financial statements in there. One's called an entity-wide that puts everything for the county all in one place. It includes all the assets, including capital assets, and includes all the debt. So the entity-wide is the most similar to outside entities. Then you have your fund statements are what, which are what you're used to seeing. So again, 2 complete sets of financial statements. So if you actually do go in and look at the report, you want to probably have the table of contents open so you can kind of tell and track along with what you're looking at. Really briefly, just on numbers, at the end of the year, county-wide, everything together with all your assets recorded, all your buildings and that type of thing, and your debt, you had a total net position of total equity of a little over $96 million. A lot of that is tied up in capital assets, so you had an unrestricted net position of just a little bit under $14 million. That's all I was going to cover on the actual financial statements unless anyone had any questions. A second report we issue is called an auditor's communication letter. It's just about the audit process and kind of tells you some of the findings and things that we had, just to tell you how the audit itself went. Just a couple highlights. There was no transactions that we thought were unusual or significant, and none that didn't have support for them. We did adopt 2 new accounting standards during the year, and these financial statements did not change any numbers, but there is additional disclosures related to fair value of investments, and there are additional disclosures related to tax abatements. So when you look at the footnotes, they're a little bit different this year because of that. Coming up in a year or two, you're going to have to adopt a new accounting standard related to fiduciary activities, so we'll talk more about that when that time gets closer. The accounting records were in good order. We did not propose any significant adjustments. We get full cooperation when we do the audit. We talk to a lot of different people throughout the county, ask for a lot of different information. Obviously, we work the closest with the county auditor's office, so the audit went really, really smooth, I thought. No disagreements with management on any issues, no accounting issues or auditing issues. We didn't have any difficulties in performing the audit. And again, we thought we received full cooperation from everybody at the county that we worked with. So that is the auditor's communication letter. Because the county spends more than $750,000 in federal awards, we actually have to do additional audit work on top of the normal financial statement audit. The federal government tells us what to test and requires 2 additional reports. You'll see at the back of the financial statement a listing of all the federal grants and federal awards that you spent during the year, and it was about $1.2 million for 2016. We do issue 2 additional reports under the single audit. One is on financial reporting, where we didn't have anything to report, and one is on the actual programs themselves, the federal programs. We had an unmodified opinion on compliance, which means you complied with all the requirements that you were supposed to, and we had no findings related to the program itself, so 2 clean reports related to the single audit. The last report is a management letter. This is where we would tell you about findings if we had any. When we do the audit, we look at internal control to figure out how we're going to audit and what we're going to audit. So obviously when we're doing that, we gain an understanding of both the design of the system and then the implementation of the system. So when we're doing our work, if we notice a problem on either one of those, we make a list, we sit back at the end and decide how big a deal is it. The most significant or the most serious thing would be material weakness. What that means is there is a flaw in either the design or the implementation of your internal control, where something could happen, and if it did, it could cause your financial statements to be materially misleading. And we did not find any material weaknesses, so that is obviously a very good thing. We do have some recommendations just for the county to consider, and they are listed in the letter, but again, no material weaknesses noted in the audit. So that is a brief summary of the audit, how it went. Again, a modified opinion, clean opinion on the financial statements, clean opinion on program compliance, no issues performing the audit, and the county was fully competent.
So when I look at capital assets, on page 25, you got buildings for $29 million. I mean, we got one building across the street that's worth $30 million. So obviously that's a depreciable amount, or?
Yes, so in the financial statements themselves, when you look at capital assets, so under accounting standards, you record those at cost less accumulated depreciation. So capital assets in no way reflects fair value of those assets, it's the depreciated cost of it. So a building lasts 30 years or whatever, so you have the cost and say it costs $10 million, you're gonna depreciate that. So at the end of 30 years, it's gonna have a zero value. And, it's the same way for all the equipment that you have, the vehicles that you have. Land is the only non-depreciable asset. But that is correct, it is depreciated.
So it didn't
value.
really show the actual value of the asset.
Correct, it does not show the fair value.
So that is reflected in our net position then, basically.
Right, in that position, equity is the depreciated cost, not the fair value. Essentially, the only thing that is at fair value in your financial statements are investments, because that's readily determinable. So when you look at your balance sheet, anything related to investments, that is the estimated fair value at the end of the year. Everything else is related to cost, including capital assets. Obviously,
That's the
capital
only thing.
assets, some would be over, some would be less. Equipment, I'm not sure you could sell it for the depreciated cost, but buildings you maybe could.
If the depreciated cost was zero, I would hope you'd be able to sell it for that. Same way with equipment, so,
Right.
anyway, that's the only thing that I don't really agree with on our assets, is that an asset is an asset and it's worth whatever the market value is. It's not worth the depreciated value.
Under accounting standards, it is depreciated cost. How would you'd have to go through and determine the fair value of every asset that you own if you wanted to show fair value. But under accounting standards, that is how it is.
Right, but when I do a financial statement to the bank for my business or whatever, I show actual value or a close actual value. That gives them a representation of what my assets are. So, not a depreciated amount, because otherwise they wouldn't loan me any money. But I think you guys did a good job. That's the only part that I really didn't understand, so.
Anything, Jeff?
No, I'm kind of like Chris, this isn't a fair market value statement or anything, so.
No, they talked about that, but at
Government.
the same time. Well, even in private business, if you issue GAAP financial statements in accordance with accounting standards, it's still depreciated costs. The only ones under accounting principles, not maybe what you submit to the bank, would be personal financial statements. So it's an issue that GAAP, accounting standards talks about. Should it be at fair value? Should it be at depreciated costs? And right now, it's still at depreciated costs for the most part.
Well, I agree.
But that's not what banks look at.
I can agree that you can depreciate it, and you're going to depreciate it, but if you're also investing back into it, then hopefully you're offsetting the depreciation. Just like we put in new windows and we've redone the courthouse and everything else, so we're reinvesting in our facilities so that they don't depreciate and hopefully they increase in value. So, I understand that that's the accounting principle that you guys have to go by, but hopefully you take care of your assets and they maintain their value. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome to stay.
I feel like too much like I'm in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, commission comments, bids and contracts, signing of cot donation documents.
We continue to distribute our used cots. Those two documents are contracts that Jill prepared, not really contracts, but just agreements that Jill prepared previously that we've used, and the asset numbers are labeled on the back for each one.
No, they're the same as the ones we did before, right?
Who are we donating them to?
Miller County and Dodd Training Organization, I think, to use for training.
I move that we approve and sign the donation agreement for the cots.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Contract award and signing for 2017 asphalt restorative seal program.
We have a contract with Corrective Asphalt Materials in the amount of $65,636.15. And this is a cooperative procurement contract in which we're utilizing the City of Moberly's bid prices for work that we have done. Moberly has bid this work the past several years, and we piggybacked on their bids to do a contract with Corrective Asphalt Materials. And the roads we're going to do are Lovers Ford and Swift Road and Boise Bruley Road. And this restorative seal is a rejuvenator that will allow the asphalt to maintain a good condition for years beyond normal life. And we've been doing these seals pretty much every year as funding is available to extend the life of our payments, get more life out of our payments, extend our budgets as much as possible. So we would recommend approval of this contract to Corrective Asphalt Materials for that amount that I mentioned earlier, $65,636.15. Questions?
Is this for a chip seal or?
It's actually a penetrating sealer, and it's done on newer asphalt pavements to rejuvenate the chemical properties in the asphalt that'll allow that asphalt to last a lot longer. We're seeing good success on the ones we've done thus far, so. Good. So this would be contract approval and signing.
I move that we sign the contract with Corrective Asphalt Materials.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, contract amendment for WIC.
Good morning. This is just a small contract amendment because they had a special line item for travel monies for staff to go to a WIC conference. They're not having a WIC conference this year, so they're taking that special line item money out of the contract. That's all.
Why are they not having a WIC conference?
I think they only do it every other year.
Oh, okay.
Or they're not getting it scheduled until after this contract period because their contract doesn't run in the calendar year. Anyway, it's not going to fall in the contract year. I don't know.
So do we have something to sign or?
Jill did.
Okay.
Do you want to do that now? Or we're doing it now?
I move that we sign the program services contract with DHSS.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any unfinished business? New business, accounts payable review.
I'd ask for approval of accounts payable pending review.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. First reading of budget adjustment number 3.
This is for, first reading, no action today. It's for $650. It's for the juvenile center under their foster court grant. Michael's here if you have any questions about it. Otherwise, we'll bring it back up in 10 days.
What was it for? Just trying to pull it up here.
Fostering. It's $650.
This was our foster initiative with the court improvement. Allows us to pay for meals at our meetings.
Okay.
So again, no action today, and we'll bring it up in 10 days.
Thanks.
Okay.
Can we go ahead and do the other budget amendments? Christie needs to leave.
Oh, okay. It's not in order. The next two are hers. The second one is the first reading of budget adjustment number 4. This is a new grant. Okay, never mind. Let's do Christie's. Budget adjustment number 5.
which is for $1,500 for the WIC program. No action today, but if you have any questions about it, Christie's here.
So $1,500 for.
Right. Well, the WIC in Missouri is going to be implementing an EBT program, which is basically going to be cards instead of the vouchers for the grocery store.
Okay.
And they want to send Melinda to Oregon to see how their program works. So basically, we have to pay for her trip up front, and then they're going to give us $1,500 to reimburse it. So.
Okay.
Is that gonna cover it?
Plenty. And they
Okay.
said whatever's left over, we get to keep. But, I know, it's like, well, couldn't she just use that WIC conference money that you just took out? But it doesn't, you know.
That's what I was like.
I know.
Okay.
For their auditing purposes, I'm sure that's not allowed. So they're basically going to give us the money to cover Melinda's travel so she could go and see the pilot program. They're just selecting a few LPHAs to go. So it's really an honor that she got picked.
$1,500 doesn't seem like that much to
No.
cover the trip.
I don't think she's going to be there but 1 or 2 days.
Maybe she's
Yeah, but-
going
I know her
back-
flight was $500 because we already booked it.
Okay.
So,
So again, no action today, but we'll go in 10 days then.
Okay.
Okay.
thank you.
And then I'll just go ahead with the fourth one is the budget adjustment first reading. This is for a grant with the Juvenile Center. It's a new grant. It's for $8,460. Domestic Relation Resolution Fund grant.
This was a grant that we wrote. We have a number of cases that we have for contested and uncontested consent cases with our families, and this allows us to pay for attorneys. For contested cases, we will have a set price of $1,500. For uncontested cases, it'll be $800. And we're in the process of writing contracts to have attorneys provide that service for us.
Okay.
So again, no action today. We'll bring it up in 10 days. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go back to discussion of EMS staffing.
Okay. So in the time I've been here, our volumes have continued to increase, and even more telling is over the last year, the volumes have increased dramatically, particularly during certain times of the day with some predictability. I sent you a summary of the data that we pulled. Basically, we're up in every category. And not only that, but next week we start our ventilator transport program. So we're going to add more volume. While not significant, probably those trips will be a little more time consuming, even the trips to Columbia. And of most concern is the number of status zeros that we've had lately and had to rely on outside agencies to come into the county and into Jefferson City to take calls because we didn't have an ambulance available. So I gave a couple of proposals based on the numbers that Kristen and I ran some time ago. Those are annualized numbers, but one of the options is just to remove the supervisors from their ambulance, put them on supervisor duty, replace them with paramedics, and that essentially buys us an extra crew at half the money because when we get down to low staffing, we can call or page in an additional staff member to staff the ambulance with them. So it accomplishes a couple things. One is it makes them available to help the shift run more smoothly. They're not in the back of an ambulance on the way to St. Louis trying to balance staffing and referring transfers and doing all those kinds of things. They're here, they're able to maintain the shift, and they can staff at the not the additional ambulance, the necessary ambulance, along with another staff member, whether that be Kevin, myself, or another staff member. So that's one option. The other option is to hire that additional crew, which would obviously, with a two-person crew, that doubles the expenditure. But I think a couple things here. One is we've got to get these supervisors off the trucks. It's just, from an incident management standpoint, and the way the shifts have been running and the volumes that we've been seeing, they're nearly useless as shift leaders, shift commanders. To me, they're there for a reason, and we need them in that capacity. And second is, if we continue down this path, to me, these status zeros so far have been warning shots, if you will. We're really going to have a bad outcome if we don't deal with this. We know exactly the times of days that the status zeros happen, and typically they're in the evening through midnight, occasionally a little after midnight, but usually up until midnight, and that's when the day shift staffing starts to thin out, the night shift staffing is there. So the other thing that happens here is that we have to pull the south truck in, so essentially we leave everything south of Jefferson City uncovered. Because just to be honest, we've got to play the numbers game, and the numbers game says that most of the calls drop in the Jefferson City proper area, or that area of the county where it typically has the highest volume. So we have to pull them in, and fortunately we've not had a call in the deep south part of the county while that's happened. But again, continue to play that level of roulette, and it eventually is going to happen. So I'm here requesting that we take up one of those recommendations.
I'm not ready to act on that today. I'd requested some information, and I still haven't received it on the reason why we're going status zero. Anyway, so just from some of the information that I've gotten, the south truck really isn't making that many calls, according to some of the reports that we've seen in some of the past monthly reports from Kevin Weberg. And so, you know, it doesn't seem like that truck is being utilized south, and obviously that does leave the county a little bit vulnerable. But you know, as the west truck gets pulled into Jeff City or even the southwest truck, and I know those trucks are being pulled in and utilized as well. So obviously we got to do the best that we can. One of the things that seemed like was the cause of the status zeros was that we keep doing these long distance transfers after 7 o'clock at night, and when we only got 5 units available, I would think that we would try to defer those to 7 a.m. or whatever, so that we can handle the emergency calls. And then you had said something about, and of course I saw a incident report on the supervisor headed to West Plains, and I mean I would think that you know, we would have waited for another ambulance to become available and made that supervisor. Yeah, I agree. The supervisor shouldn't be in West Plains. He should be here locally, and so obviously another unit should take that. And I mean, a long distance transfer like that didn't seem like it was a critical and time sensitive issue. So, you know, but like I said, I don't have all the data, so it's hard for me to take a look at. But you know, if long distance transfers are causing us to go status zero, then I think we need to take a seriously hard look at doing long distance transfers, especially after 7 o'clock at night. So that's all the comments I got.
Part of the problem on some of these transfers is some of them really are, you know, a matter of life and death when we're transferring. Others, you know, hospitals, if they're Medicare, they don't get paid. You know, I mean, when they're, and so they basically, they can't keep them, or you know, it's a question of what do you do with them? I mean, do we let them sit in a wheelchair out in front of the hospital till we can transport them, or it's
Well, when I went out and talked to other ambulance services, they take care of emergency situations first, and if they get to a certain staffing level, they refuse all transfers. Just plain refuse. And so, you know, I think that's probably a pretty good thing to do. I mean, when our staffing gets to a certain level, we refuse to do transfers. because we know that we have to respond to emergency situations. Now, I mean, if that leaves the hospitals holding on to patients, I mean, they're still at the hospital. They're still being cared for. And so, but like I said, I don't have all the information. And so.
What information do you need, Chris?
Well, I asked, and I sent you an email on this, Jerry, why are we going status zero?
We're status zero because our call volume's up 25%, our transfer volume's up 60%, and the total emergency calls have increased by 20%. We're going level zero because of emergency calls as well.
Well,
We had 3 emergency calls drop Friday night in 15 minutes. We have 4 crews on. So I don't know what more data I can give you, and I can't. You want this service to be self-sufficient. I will tell you, and you can ask anybody in the country who does EMS finances, an EMS system will not be self-sufficient by not doing transfers. You use the transfer revenue to subsidize the emergency revenue. So if you're willing to pay more subsidy toward us, then that's fine. We can get other folks to do transfers. I can tell you that the neighboring services, we're putting a burden on them as well. Osage only has 2 ambulances. They've turned us down several times lately for trips because they've been on trips themselves. And we talk about the burden being on our system. This happened 7, 8, 9 years ago prior to me, where we took the obligation to provide EMS, and if we're going to provide it, we should provide it, and EMS is transfers too. So I can't maximize revenue and not do transfers. It can't happen that way. If you just run emergencies, you're going to spend more tax money and more subsidy to provide less calls.
It was about 25% of our business last month, the transfers.
And it will be even more. I mean, we just spent $12,000 or $15,000 on ventilators, and that's going to add probably in the neighborhood of 5 to 8 trips a month. Most of those are to Columbia. They're not long transfers, but there will be the occasional one that goes to a ventilator care facility, and those are big ticket trips. But I can't not take those because now we're depreciating ventilators, and if I turn down a ventilator trip, we probably shouldn't have even purchased them. So it's not my intent to be argumentative, it's just my intent to give you the data to support what we're trying to do. But we're going to have an issue if we don't address this soon.
We had the one, we were status zero more than an hour.
Yeah, and again, you can say we can rely on the neighboring services, but using Callaway and Osage is still gives us an average response time of a half an hour on an emergency call. And there's no crystal ball. If we wouldn't have taken the Kansas City trip that Friday night and there wouldn't have been any calls, then we would have looked like idiots for not taking a call that nets us $2,000 in revenue and had 4 crews sitting here all night. We take the trip and we end up being busy that night. So I'm just trying to do the best with what I have, but it's not enough. And I believe that it's a risky proposition to continue down the road that we're on.
So the thing that I had wanted is I wanted to see all the calls for the shift. And so you obviously took a trip to KU Medical. And so, you know, I just wanted to see the calls for that shift. But what it looks like when you send us stuff is that, hey, I got a truck out to KU Medical after 7 o'clock on a Friday night, and now we go status zero. What that looks like to me is if we didn't do the long distance transfer after 7, we would have had plenty of trucks to cover. So that's all I asked for.
I don't think we can tell the hospital they have to wait 12 hours for that trip. I just don't think we can. Well, and I'm not sure we can get anybody else to take it for us.
Why is that?
They've got service to provide in their area. It's not their business model to take our transfers for us. They do it to help us out, but at some point it gets to be that they're supplementing our staff. It's not mutual aid. They're just supplementing our staff.
So they're basically saying we have to take care of our emergency situations in our area, and they're refusing to do the long-distance transfer, which
Any,
is-
Osage is in a different position, they're in the hospital, but it would be any.
Right? Well,
You have to
that's all I'm
staff
saying too, is that, you know, we have to staff our emergency situation in our area and do long-distance transfers last. I mean, emergency situations are a whole lot different, but, you know, when I keep seeing status zeros and we're doing long-distance transfers all over the state, it makes me wonder, hey, what's going on?
Well, one of my charges when I came here was to maximize revenue. You can't maximize revenue by turning down long-distance transfers. So,
Well,
chicken or the egg, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't want us to do transfers, we won't do transfers, but I'm telling you that our financials are going to take a tremendous hit. We've been 50,000 over what we've seen in revenue the last 2 months. It's largely due to the fact that we're now seeing the income coming in from taking these transfers. So you're going to talk about reducing a small number of calls, but reducing a larger amount of revenue. So I'll do what you tell me to do. I think not doing transfers is a terrible business decision in EMS.
I didn't say to not do transfers.
Well,
And of
long
course-
distance transfers.
And I didn't say to not do long-distance transfers. I just said, I need the data. I mean, if you got 5 trucks sitting and a call comes in to do a long-distance transfer, I would expect you to do it.
Then what if 6 calls drop right after that? Then you're going to tell me I should have taken the trip.
No.
That's what happened
no,
that Friday
I didn't
night.
say that, Jerry.
That's what
I didn't
happened
say that,
Friday
but
night.
I said if you show me the whole shift and when the calls come in, so I had 15 calls on that shift, and you show me, and at 10 o'clock, we got a long-distance transfer. You already took that call. Well, the other 6 drop after that. Then I can see the data that, okay, we went status 0 because we had all these calls come in after that.
We were status 0 without that trip. Based on the emergency calls, we had a call
Well,
spike.
that's fine. All I've asked for is all the call list for the shift. And whether that be a 12-hour shift or.
For every day? You want that every day?
No. For, when we hit status 0, I wanted to see the call list for that shift. I mean, you're sending us these incident reports and so I just want to know why. I mean, you can see it on the, you know, as the calls come in. And so, I mean, if you're doing everything right and you got people sitting and you take a long distance transfer and then 10 calls drop, I mean, yeah, you're going to be at status 0. I get that. But if we got 5 trucks out, or say after hours, we got 4 trucks out and then we take a long distance transfer, well, that's probably not the best
I
way to
believe
look
the
at
night in
things.
question, we had no trucks out when we took the transfer. I'll review that, I'll double check it, but I don't think there were any trucks out when we took the transfer. It was 6 or 7 o'clock Friday night.
And that's quite possibly gonna be our only trip we'll be making to Kansas. I mean, yeah, that's
Well,
not a normal
It was
occurrence.
Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's generally, from my limited knowledge here, if we go to Kansas City, it's usually the Research Hospital or KU Medical Center, but it's on the Kansas City, Missouri side.
Now, when football starts up, and we'll have to have an ambulance at Blair Oaks and Public School Stadium, Russville, when they get their football program, so,
And Lincoln.
and Lincoln.
Elias.
Yeah, so, yeah, with Elias new, there could be some evenings when you're gonna have all of our ambulances at the football games.
Well, we'll balance that. We can't, we have a commitment to them. They pay for our services, so we'll have to balance that. We won't be able to put on-duty crews there. We'll have to call crews in to cover those. There's no way, if everybody plays at home, all our ambulances will be there. 3 of the 4.
Any questions?
turn.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a numbers person, Jerry. Got your emails about our numbers were up over 300,000, I think, the last 2 months. How much is that up? I didn't get to reply to the email, but I was curious, what
It
are we
seems like-
normally at?
Seems like about 270 or so. We've been in the 320 range the last couple of
Okay.
months.
So we're starting to realize some of the income, the revenue from picking up a lot of these transfers that we've been capturing and capturing most of the service transfers and the 911's correct? That's what that's basically saying?
Yes.
Okay. I think first and foremost, we do have to take care of the emergency calls. And we had a real rosy picture painted for picking up the transfers. And it looks like we're starting to realize some of the revenue. Debbie, is that?
We were at
Agreeing
330
with-
and 319. There was 1 month last year that we were over 300. But, yeah, it's been around the 270 mark.
Okay. I mean, that's been my biggest concern, and I think once we start to realize that, is there any way we can look at having somebody on call, so that way if we have a transfer come in, you can call them in? Besides paying
Do we wanna
overtime to
create
somebody?
A system to have on-call pay? We
I
can
don't
do
know,
that.
somebody, I'm not necessarily saying on-call pay, but I don't know, there's times when business gets busy and you have to call in the troops somewhere along the line.
We tried that the other day. We've referred 4 transfers the last 3 days to other agencies. We tried that on a whim one day when we had 2 long-distance ones to see if we could get somebody in, and no one responded to our call.
Okay,
We asked them if they'd be willing to either go to St. Louis, or if we sent a crew to St. Louis, if they'd come in to run 911 calls to other crews in St. Louis, and no one responded.
I would just think they'd have an opportunity to make more money, they'd
Right,
be
correct.
jumping at, but I
We
guess
gave
I'm
that a
wrong.
try because we'd already referred one that day, and my concern was, I knew Osage wasn't gonna take the second one, because that would have depleted their resources that day, so, I don't remember who they got. They got another agency to take it eventually.
Okay. I'd rather look at this during budget time. I mean, if we were losing a ton of calls, I mean, I can see there's times when we have some status zeros, but I think just, right now, just deal with losing some transfers. Unless you see that totally affecting revenue in the future.
It will. We'll be
I
back to
mean, why-
270. So I cannot do both. I cannot keep the revenue at 320 and turn away more transfers to try and eliminate status zeros. I can't do both. There's no EMS crystal ball that allows us to
Yeah, I
figure that
understand
out.
that.
And I could
understand that
turn down a
completely.
KU trip on a Friday, and all 4 of those trucks will sit there till midnight and not turn a wheel. That's just the risk that you take.
Yeah, that's the nature of the business, and
I don't think you can really tell a hospital when they call and say we need to transfer this person to Kansas City.
We've
that-
actually, it started with John and Rodney in reestablishing our relationship with the hospitals, which had been fractured. That's how it was relayed to me, because the hospitals had quit calling us for transfers sometime a few years prior, or the year prior in 16, I don't remember exactly when. So John and Rodney went back and asked them to always call us, and then if we couldn't respond within an hour, we would facilitate somebody else doing the trip. And for the most part, that's happened. But my concern is, they're hospitals, they need their bed, they need their ER beds, and if we don't respond and we can't get anybody to respond, they're gonna start shopping for other services, and we're gonna lose the system that we have in place. I made a commitment to them that we would be more customer friendly in the future, and again, if it's the sentiment of this group to not do that, then I'll relay that to them. But there's a lot of issues at play here. There's our relationship with the hospitals. There's the financial piece. There's a number of issues that go into this. That's why I thought, I get that the easiest way to handle this is in the budget cycle. Well, the people that prepared the budget last year were only here a few weeks before the budget was due. So, and then the guy who inherited the budget had nothing to do with the budget. So all of these things create this need mid-year. And I thought the most reasonable approach would be take supervisors off the truck now, buy that crew for half the money, and it's only going to be 4 months. So the numbers you see on Kristen's report, you can divide by 3 to get the remaining piece of this year. And then we can talk about the staffing next year. That's what I thought was the most reasonable approach. If you don't want to do that, then we'll have to try and come up with a system that somehow minimizes the status zeros. But that's going to take, we're going to take a financial hit in doing that. I want you to understand that when I come back through the budget year and you say, well, your revenue took a spike, but now it's back down in the 260s or 70s, I'm going to have to remind you that's because we're giving away 25 transfers a month to keep.
I think there's a happy
minimize the
medium
status
in there,
zero.
Jerry. I think we can try to limp along to the end of the year, lose some of the transfers, you know, and there's no, I guess, special formula that tells you whenever you're gonna have a lot more emergencies. I mean, you know times that you're busier, but if you know you're gonna be busier on a Friday night at midnight, when all the drunks out there falling down, then, you know, we don't do transfers at that time. Then we turn them away. So if there's any way we can limp along, I like that we have the increased revenue. We're starting to realize that. And that's been one of my biggest things, because we put a buttload of money into EMS this year already. I don't know what we've transferred over from contingency or whatever, but we've made a lot of changes already. So I don't know, I'm on the fence with it, because I think that seeing the realized revenue does justify the change. But I don't know if I'm ready to act on it today. Maybe changing in the middle of the year. I'd like to look at it a little more. So that's kind of where I'm at with it now. I'm not saying yes or no today. I don't know where you guys are at with it. I'd like to chew on some more of it.
Well, my mother-in-law's in the hospital again, and when she went in through the emergency room, there were 5 others waiting for rooms. They had 3 rooms, and 2 of them, they had to transfer over to MU then, because we have a MU, when they're full, they will send us their patients. When we're full, we will send them. So we're gonna get transfer. I mean, if you've got somebody who's sick enough to be admitted into a hospital, they need to be in the hospital. And so if you say, well, we're not gonna transfer anybody at night, you know, then you can try to call Osage, or you can try to call Callaway, but those people need to be in a hospital.
We're not saying we're not transferring them. We're saying we're not gonna go on a long-distance transfer at 7 o'clock at night if you're going to Kansas City. That's a lot different than driving somebody up to Columbia. If they're full over there at Capitol, why don't they send them over here to the other hospital? If it's that big a deal, they gotta be in a hospital, bring them over here 2 miles away. That don't make sense.
They will divert them if they're
So,
full.
Yeah,
They'll divert from Capitol to St. Mary's, or St. Mary's to Capitol, and if they're both full, then they'll divert everything to the university.
St. Mary's will send them to the university too.
But, you know, a lot of times, you know, a lot of those critical patients, they go from our hospitals to the university, so, especially on the weekends.
Probably the most economical way right now would be to take the supervisors off the truck. So we've got them to staff another ambulance when some of this stuff pops up. And to me, that's something we could do right now.
Be about $30,000 net this year.
Yeah.
so you're saying add 1,
Yeah.
or you're saying just take the supervisor off?
I'm saying
ambulance?
take the supervisor off. Of course, and you guys are gonna have to step in, but I mean, when we need that other ambulance, we need that other ambulance.
Kevin and I have no problem going in there 2 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
or midnight and being the extra on the truck.
But to me, with everything that's been happening, you know, lately, I think we need to do something now and not, you know, budget, yeah, we need to look at everything in budget, but I think right now, it's critical.
So in the June report that Kevin sent us, we had 3 referred. So I assume that that's all the referrals that we did in June?
No, that's a manual pull. If they forget to do that, we can't get that out of the CAD. So that's not accurate.
Okay, well, there's more information that I need then. So anyway, because in your report, it showed 3 referred and 2 of those were because of ventilators. So I don't know.
Those are still the known ones that we're still receiving. We're suspecting that there's some that are still being contacted without us in that mix. So we suspect that to be a greater number that's actually documented.
So the hospitals are contacting somebody else directly?
We're suspecting that just because we've seen a couple other ambulances there. We can't prove anything of that sort.
But I mean, I would assume in our report, and of course you're saying it's not accurate, but I would hope in the future that it would be accurate, that when we're referring somebody, that would be when we're at a status 0 or we just can't handle it or whatever that the case may be.
That or there's another truck already out on a transfer somewhere. We won't want to send all our resources out of town, so we'll refer those.
The problem is the dispatcher, in the midst of all of this, status 0, referring a transfer, has to remember to go to a separate log and log that, and it just doesn't always happen. It's human nature. So that's why I said it's not accurate. I'm not sure if the new CAD will pull that specifically.
Much easier.
We could probably fix it so that it
We're
could.
already at, what, 4 this month, I think, at least. Jerry, do you have those?
Well, there's always going to be instances where we go status 0 because stuff's going to happen. It always happens at the same time, and I mean, it's just going to tap our resources. You know, even if we had another truck, we're still going to go status 0. I mean, you're never going to not have status 0s. Now, to try to minimize that, I think that's what we have to do. So
that's exactly what I'm trying to do, because there's a trend, and if you saw that chart, and I don't have a color scanner, so yours wasn't in color, but the chart looked like this, and I'll give it to you. But the green is the calls, the blue line is staffing. So if the calls go above the staffing, you're past status 0. So that was that weekend. So you can see that you can minimize it, but look where the spikes are. They're in the evening, and that's the point that I was getting to. We know pretty much day in, day out when the status 0s are going to happen. They're going to happen in the evening and late at night. Rarely after 2 o'clock in the morning. Usually in a window between 4 and midnight, give or take a little bit. That's when we reasonably know. So from my perspective, it's a lot harder to defend status 0 if somebody doesn't get an ambulance when you know that you're going to have issues with staffing at that point in the day, and then you have a status 0 and then you miss a call. To me, you have greater risk and liability there than if you just have a call spike. Kevin and I ran a call at 8:30 one morning to the Truman Building because we were at status 0. So that part happens. That's pretty easily defendable because that's a call spike. It happens. That's what Chris was talking about. But when we know when the status 0s are happening, then that's a lot harder to defend, both publicly and legally, I would think, although I don't want to speak for the lawyer.
So do we need to adjust our scheduling?
Everything I've seen when Paramedics Plus did the revamp of the schedule, I've told you this before, I think it's spot on. I think what they have done, based on my past history with demand analysis and looking at types of calls, types of days of calls, length of time of calls, I can't say to change it all. The only tweak I could see would be to adjust the 9 to 5 crew a little bit, but again, You got things that start happening at 9 in the morning, 10 in the morning, and you kind of want them there. We could back their shift up an hour or two. I just don't see that being, it's just going to create a domino effect, really. I don't know how we can adjust the existing staffing to accommodate this need. I've looked at it, I've got a whiteboard full of options right now.
So if we don't take the supervisors off, then another option would be to add a truck to this window, which is going to be.
You could do that. That would be doubly as expensive. Like I said, I just got my handy phone calculator out and did some quick math, but our numbers were just taking the supervisors off the truck, annualized salary and benefits and everything's $115,000. So, given that it's already July, it'll be late August, so you've got September, October, November, December, you got 4 months. So a third of $115,000 is $38,000. That would be the net expense for the year. One could argue it's paid for in a month if the revenue trend continues, and it buys us some insurance.
But they would still be our backup when we need an ambulance when we're at status 0.
Yeah. So you've got them to help dispatch manage the system, and you bought that extra ambulance because I live right down the street. Kevin's not far away. We've got crew members that live fairly closely, and we can get that other ambulance operational a little bit.
Excuse me.
So that's where I was at. And then we can haggle the crew, the additional crew in the 18 budget year, because we'll have more data then to support or not support whether this income's going to continue. And I have every reason to believe it is. And this month, I just ran the numbers. We've had a couple slower days lately. I told you in the email that this month was going to break last month's record. We're now right at 1,000 call clip. We were at almost 1,100 call clip earlier in the month. We had a couple slower days. So, and again, I don't know if 1,000 calls a month is going to become the norm, or once it cools down and gets cold, nobody goes outside again, it's going to go down to 900 calls a month.
Hospitals are very busy right now. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You want to punt it for a week, or where are you at with it right now? I've been on their case about the revenue. The revenue's increased. I'd probably be okay with taking the supervisors off the ambulance and putting one on to help, maybe not eliminate status zeros, but make it a little easier on them. So, and then we can revisit it in 3 months too and see where the money is at that point, if we want to do that. But if you want to wait and look at some more numbers and statistics and stuff and kick it around, we can. Because between now and next Tuesday or whatever, it's not gonna break your else's back, but.
Right. I mean, you're realizing $50,000 a month roughly in increased revenue, but last year we added 5 new full-time employees, and now you're talking about adding 2 more, and so,
Well, the employees that we had last year, though, didn't necessarily add an ambulance. This way, we'd have an ambulance sitting there that, if we are at status 0,
right.
the supervisor hops on, Jerry, Kevin, whoever, and we cover that status 0.
Right.
So that's the part I'm looking at. Then we can continue to look after the numbers stay the same for the rest of the year. They're there. Then we can start figuring out, okay, what other transfers are we not capturing, and try to capture more of them and increase the revenue even more. So that's kind of, like I said, I'm the numbers person on that part of it. I look at that part and say, we got to be able to justify it. First off, we got to take care of the 911 emergency calls. I'm not so much worried about the transfers subsidizing that, because we got to take care of that either way.
Right.
So, but if we got an opportunity to be the only emergency service in, Cole County, and capture all the calls, and actually have some revenue coming in, revenue stream on that, It's gonna reduce what it cost us to run the rest of the emergency services for 911 calls.
And I think we can
So-
fix the numbers, since Kristen and I worked on these numbers about the transit. We can put 2 EMTs on transit and run transfers all day long for BLS calls. So that will, if we do the extra crew, my proposal would be staff that transit with the BLS crew, 2 EMTs, minimize our cost. So you got the lowest cost truck and the lowest cost crew doing the lowest cost trips. That makes the most sense, but that, to me, that's down the road.
Yeah, and that's another thing, I mean, you're reducing costs there on those, so I think that transit I think that was a good expenditure, so.
But I guess Friday, the hospitals let out a lot of people, because I was over at Cap Region Friday. Our ambulances were there every time I left and came back. They were there.
I think Friday might have been the 45 call day.
There were two ambulances at one time that left and did some stuff, came back, and there's just one ambulance at a different, so.
I think we had 45 calls Friday.
Yeah.
I think like 10 of those were transfers.
Why are they letting them out on Friday?
Because nobody wants to work on
Well,
Saturday.
we cut staff a little bit. You don't get as much therapy and things like that.
Right, because they got limited staff all weekend, right? Yep, so
Yeah.
every critical call comes into our hospital and then they go to Columbia. Right?
Not necessarily, some of them, our ERs,
I've been there twice
Yeah.
and been diverted and
yeah.
so, anyway.
As long as we're getting reimbursed, I don't care. We're charging them for it.
Chances are Columbia trips are slam dunks for reimbursement if they have insurance.
Mhm.
But like I said, you want to keep a good relationship with the hospital, so we don't want to be saying, well, all right, nope, we just won't do it. Let's try to capture them all, but I don't know, you want to kick
I
it
mean,
around?
obviously, we've seen a spike in the revenue, but it's been, almost 8 months since call volume was really up, or John had told us that the call volume was up, and, anyway, is it a trend? Is it just the summer months? Is it, we're capturing more, transfers? I think it's probably too early to tell, but.
Keep in mind,
I didn't know those numbers since 2013, I've never seen 1,000 call them out.
keep in mind the revenue cycle in EMS is 90 to 120 days behind the volume. Just keep that in mind.
Hey, Kevin, on the year-to-date call totals on your report, what's the red line?
I think that's last year's trend.
Okay, I see.
Thanks.
So either we're realizing a lot more or capturing a lot more of the transfers. Well, early in the year, they were down. So, maybe you want to kick it around some more and look at it,
It's fun.
see what numbers we need to compare, and if you can do some of that.
That red line is last year's numbers.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I'd like to see more data that supports it and make sure that,
Could you get with Chris and give him what he needs, and then next week we can maybe take
I
some
mean, I'd
action?
send it to all of us.
Yeah, send it-
I
well,
like doing a,
yeah.
comparable analysis of the other two, but
Um,
that's what I come in looking at is our numbers. Why are we at 1,000 calls, what, 3 months in a row now? Or, well, it's still under,
Close.
but, yeah. Are we actually capturing more transfers, and then that way, when we get more revenue, it's gonna be continuing?
Well, it's both. It's 911 and transfers. Transfers taking the biggest jump, but 911 calls are up almost 20% too.
Tell people quit
Nationwide,
getting
most
hurt.
systems are seeing 15%. jump in emergency calls. I think ours is 20.
Yeah, you look at, I think Callaway County, they just added another crew as well, and I don't think they do much of any transfers.
So when Osage County came in, and didn't they run a emergency call for us?
They've done a couple.
Run several.
Why would they run any of them if they're not gonna get paid for it? Have them run all of ours if we're not making any revenue on
It's
those.
mutual aid.
They have to by mutual aid.
Oh.
Mutual aid's different than.
There you go. So then you get paid.
It's not transfer.
Transfer.
The transfer total is that bar graph with the blue and purple and red. That's showing you your transfer jump. It's a couple pages over
Before or after?
after.
After. Oh, transfer total by shift?
No. it's
No,
bar.
not the pie graph?
Two more.
You're gonna have to print a book, I'll tell you what, that report. it's-
You got Reader's Digest versions?
it's,
All right.
uh, Okay. Let's get the figures and I still wanna do something,
I need to know what figures those are.
well,
Okay, I'll get that to you.
yeah, and then we'll revisit it next Tuesday.
All right, what we got next?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Let's keep moving ahead. Approval of final closeout change order for Parkview Meadows NID project.
Okay, we have a change order here. This would be the final closeout with Kaufman Enterprises. The original contract was $394,330.50. And there's overruns of some quantities, underruns, and then 7 change order items of various different things. And those are all included in the document, plus on the spreadsheet, detailed out. And so the change order amount would be $78,320.80. There's also some information in the document about contract time and liquidated damages. Original contract date to be completed was December 2nd. Letter dated December 6th to Kaufman Enterprises. Allowed an extension of the completion date to March 31st. And beyond that, we had some discussion with the county commission about, what to do at that point. And liquidated damages started to become an item to be discussed, and that was kind of through mutual agreement amongst us that the commission kind of handled some of that with Mr. Kaufman, who is present. And so we terminated the contract as of June 15th in order to final everything out. And the amount of additional days allowed with the original extension was 119 days. And then the termination date beyond that added another 54 days, of which liquidated damages were to be charged at $750 a day for a total of $40,500. And so the final contract amount, as the document reads, would be $432,151.30. And so I think at this point, we just open it up for discussion, and I know Mr. Kaufman would like to talk at some point, but I guess if you all call on him to discuss, that would be fine. But do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't.
Go ahead, Tom.
Morning, Tom.
Morning.
Yeah, I met with Tom yesterday, so.
Anything else you want to tell us or plead your case, or other than what you met with us individually about, or?
Well, basically the same thing that, you know, we talked about. It's, you know, I'm willing to pay a penalty, but the $40,000 I think is really excessive based upon the work that we did, the guys I had out there. You know, as I told each one of y'all that we had, I paid over $262,000 just in labor on that job. And there was $123,000 worth of concrete that we'd bought, plus all the other stuff involved. So when you got that amount of labor, that amount of concrete and stuff, shows that we were out there working all the time. Now, why it didn't get done on time or what, you know, it was a parade of problems, you know, and Eric will verify some of that. We started out with just little 4x4 cubicles, and those took a lot of time to saw, 4 foot, bust them up, dig them out, base rock, drill holes in each one for, you know, for the pins and things like that, and then to get the concrete and to finish them. And I don't know, them boys, they worked hard. I don't know what else to say, you know. What I would like to propose is that I would pay a penalty of $10,000. I know y'all are gonna have extra expense of coming in and getting what is it, the bond and things like that.
Yeah, we have to redo our Moody rating, and
Right.
we have to, it's,
I know it's a fiasco. I called it out there, I called it a job from hell. It just, you know, we worked hard. We did everything we could. I lost $100,000 on that job. 72 years old. As I was telling Jeff earlier, you know, if I was a young man, these guys his age, I'd go out and make it up again. But it's really getting to be a challenge anymore. So I guess I plead my case to the court and see if I can survive this.
Eric, do you feel the change orders were for the appropriate amounts?
Of course, the overruns of quantities, that's just what it is. And that is at the bid price that were in the contract. The 7 change order items were appropriate and agreed to between us and Tom, Public Works and Tom. We met and went over those 2 or 3 times, so.
Yeah, they don't have to be what he bid it at. He can come in and say, well, if I'm gonna have to throw in this extra work and pull guys from other jobs, I'm gonna need this amount, and it can be an amount agreed upon, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and therefore, the amounts of the change order, like the 7 items, like I said, the 50, if you look at the spreadsheet, it's 51,000 and some change.
Unless they're a bid item. If they're a bid item, you gotta do the extra work at the bid item price. You can't come in there and say, okay, now I'm gonna tear out this little chunk of concrete here, and I want $100 a square for it, you know?
There is, if the quantities are so much over what the original contract amount is, there is some language in the specs for an equitable adjustment. In my mind, looking at actually the breakdown of the percentage over, I don't have that percent shown on this sheet here, but I think the concrete pavement removal and replace, item number 1, it was around 25%.
26.
26%, okay, Tom has those numbers. That's probably within range of what I would consider not an equitable adjustment for price. Now, if you were into like double the quantity, that would be different. So I don't know, I mean, surely when it comes down to a project like this and you have damages like this, normally we would just work out an agreement internally, and there's language in the contract specifications. We use MoDOT, standard specifications for highway construction. There is room for negotiating what the agreed to amount is at the end. So, with that in mind, you know, had this played out a little bit differently and not gotten to where it was a multiple extensions of completion dates or a long extension, we probably would have had this worked out internally. He and I agreed to it, brought it to you, and it not been an issue. But because it got way past the extended completion date, we talked internally about how to handle this, and it was determined that the commission would probably negotiate with Tom on what would be allowed, if anything, and that's where, you know, because of that, I have to proceed with the straight by contract liquidated damages charge, which is $40,500. And then if you all would agree to a negotiated amount, then that's fine on my end, if that's agreed to with everybody. A dollar amount to reduce it to, it's hard to say. It'd be really tough for me to calculate exactly how much extra this is costing us. Having another contractor come in to finish, I know a definite dollar amount there. We had to extend, we had to pay interest on the note because we had to extend it due to the completion date extension, and then another extension beyond that is a little over $2,000. So that's a known number. We have employee time out there for the extended amount of time. That's hard to calculate exactly what that is. It'd be really tough to come up with a number. So, you know, I don't know that I could recommend this is the right number. That'd be hard for me to do outside of spending a lot of time trying to figure it. So, you know, normally on a case like this, we'd probably reduce it to something, but I hate to throw a number out there. I think it just, you know, Tom said pay $10,000, our dollars $40,500. You know, is there some place in between that would be okay? And keep in mind that, you know, even if we reduce it to zero, Tom is still out quite a bit due to the, you know, his bid price was probably just too low on the concrete originally, and that's caused some of the issues. So, you know, Tom's got bills that he has to pay, invoices he has to pay on different items, and.
But we had a contract.
A contract, yeah, and it's
So,
really it's.
That's where it brushes me a little bit, is that we did the extension. I mean, we worked with you, I think, over and above the, you know, lack of completion of the project. You know, heck, in December, you probably could have said, look, we tried to get into it, it's taking longer than I thought. The concrete's more than I thought it was gonna be. I probably bid it wrong. I'm gonna cut my losses. Let's just.
I didn't have that opportunity.
Terminate the contract right here.
I didn't have that opportunity at that time.
Why not?
Right?
I think you could have walked away at any
Yeah.
time.
Well, then you go after my bond
Mm-hmm.
for it, and once you go after your bond, anytime you mess with your bond, you're done. I
Right.
mean, you'll never get another bond or another government contract again.
I think if you came up here and said, look, there's no way I can do this, can we get out of this? And, you know, you cut your losses and then we move on, and we're in a lot better shape than we are now, just the time that we had an employees on the project.
I wish I knew I could get
Is-
away with that. I'd have did it. I definitely would have did it.
I think you did have the opportunity. I think Eric had been in, you know, talking with you the whole time and saying, you know, where are you at with this? Okay, if we give you an extension to March 31st, is that enough? And you continue to say, yes, okay, I can get it done. I mean, I think at that point, you said, no, I really need till, you know, July or August. And then we would have said, we can't do it that way, let's figure something else out. Do we need to basically we terminated a contract, a couple weeks ago or whenever. I mean, we could have done it the same way.
Backing up just a little bit, December 2nd, on that date of 2016, there's basically three options that could have happened. One, we grant an extension of the completion date. Two, Tom walks and forfeits his bond. Or three, we terminate the contract. It was never approached that, hey, we want to get out of this and move on. No, at that time it was, we need an extension of the contract. And so that's what we did. And we had the discussion on that. So that was March 31st. And really, from March 31st on to today, you know, those options were still there. We didn't want to extend the contract because we had already extended it and stated that we wouldn't do it again. And so really it was just charging damages, and that's where it came into, we chose to terminate the contract because of the concern that the project wouldn't get done to be able to be put on next year's taxes, and assessments and all that been made. We are facing a deadline on that. And so that's why we terminated the contract. We did that voluntarily, or we terminated it kind of in negotiation with Tom that would be the best for everybody. Still could have forfeited the bond, still could have given an extension of the completion date. You know, a number of different things could have happened. But to answer your question, Jeff, on December 2nd, I don't think it was ever an option really, unless Tom were to walk and we forfeit his bond, that we would terminate the contract at that point. That really didn't become a reality until after March 31st.
So we had some discussions about the extra that it was going to cost us to get this project completed. And was that just extra over and above the material, or was that, I mean?
Stockman Construction is doing the final work.
Right.
Based on their first invoice that they submitted, and it's basically time, cost plus, their overhead profit plus straight cost per bid item. And it was about, I estimated, if they finish at the end of the month, it was going to be in the neighborhood of about $20,000 to $25,000. So that's, is going to be a straight cost added to the project to have them come in and finish. Now it's estimated, could be more, could be less. So if you wanted to go with a dollar amount and say this is probably the only real way to figure an actual additional cost to the project, that would be one way. Add in, plus add in the $22,000 for the note extension.
So the total amount we're going to pay Stockman is going to be $25,000 roughly?
It'd be more than that. That would be the amount in addition to what we would have paid Tom. For him doing it at his bid price. See, to have Stockman, we have to piggyback off of the other project and pay that bid
Right.
price that they had. So.
Yeah, because there's a lot of extras in that shit too. You know, like those 7 driveways. You know.
And we added in your salt cut and your expense
Right,
to do that.
but I mean, that's still, somebody's gotta buy the concrete, saw them out, bust them up, you know. And there's 2 separate pours on each driveway. You can't just go in and pour it one time, you know, you gotta do 2 separate pours, so. Takes extra time.
Did we do a change order on that?
Pardon?
What?
Yeah, what he's talking about,
Yeah.
that is item number
Okay.
7, change order 7. Number 7.
What was the original start date?
Oh, golly. The notice to proceed date, and I'm not going to have it with me, but I would estimate it somewhere in the early June. And I believe the start date was, is that the contract?
Yeah, but the date's not filled in.
I had it earlier.
Kevin Light would know for sure. I think the start date, the date they started is different than the notice to proceed date. Notice to proceed date is after all the contract and stuff is in and they can officially start on it. That was give or take second week of June. I believe the actual start date was about 2 to 3 weeks after that. So there's a little time gap in there, but not excessive. Contract date, I believe, was June 4th or 6th.
Okay.
Is that right?
With a notice to proceed within 10 days, right?
Typically, yeah.
Yep.
So, say June 15th, around that date.
Yeah, I got my first check on August 5th.
They didn't, I'd say they really got going probably first part of July.
Yeah.
I think, Tom, we've bent over backwards. We gave you an extra 7 months. We tried to work with you. We were hoping, 7 months, you could get it done. And,
I thought it too.
But I'm going through, what we've got to go through now to get our Moody rating again, to get, the bonding. We already did all this once, and now we've got to do it again. And I think Troy Howard and Tony Stegman, they're not going to do this just for nothing. So,
that's why I'm agreeing to pay a penalty, but God, I got to pay these bills yet too. I owe the concrete, I owe Cole County Concrete, what is it, right at $15,000, and got to pay for the rock and all that shit. I got all the labor paid for, because those guys will murder you if you ain't got them paid. But I got all these bills to pay, and it's,
Do you agree with the 54 days then, Tom?
what's that?
So do you agree with the 54 days? I mean, you think that's reasonable?
I'm not following you on that.
For liquidated damages, you're being assessed for 54 days.
The number of days the damages were charged.
I don't know, what do you think, is that right?
I mean, that is what it is, yeah. I mean, that is 54 days from, starting on April 1st to the date we terminated the contract.
Okay.
But what I'm saying too is my guys were out there working. You can't pay $262,000 worth of labor if they were doing nothing. You don't give them a check for doing nothing.
Oh, there's a lot of people that do, believe it or not. I ain't talking
Really?
about working necessarily. We won't even go there.
Yeah.
I know I already did, but,
I mean,
Okay.
we added 20% more work, 471,000. The original contract was 394. We added 20% more work and gave you another 7 months to complete it, and it's still not done. I mean, you wouldn't have had the original contract done by December 2nd. I mean, you wouldn't have had half of it done.
Oh, that's kind
No.
of debatable, but,
I mean, well,
we're
I
both
mean,
debating here, so.
if you look at it, I mean, you would have had half of this 471 done, basically. And you'd had $250,000 done, if you look at it in total days. I mean, we had a mild winter. If you would have said, we had a terrible winter, but we had a winter where you could work almost every day.
Yeah, and they did.
Yeah, but I mean.
But you don't get no production out of them out there.
If you wouldn't have had that, you wouldn't even have been close. I mean, if we would have had 2 months of winter,
Oh, yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, 'cause there was no allowance for
It'd be
bad
December.
days.
Well, that's why we didn't charge you liquidated damages, and we gave you that extension. So,
Well, guys, all I know is I gotta pay a big tax bill here come December 31st, and I don't know how I'm gonna do that either, so.
well, I'm just looking, I've said this how many times, I'm a numbers person. The number of days, you said that is what it is. The 750 is in the contract. I mean, if you had an argument, maybe you could argue a number of the days. The amount, we had that amount in there because it was very important to get this done by a certain date so we can get this on the 2018 taxes, and then also for the bonding. If we don't stick with that, it's gonna set precedent in the future, And anytime we have a contract with somebody and there is, you know, liquidated damages in there, they're just gonna say, well, you didn't charge them last time, so it really means nothing. So I don't know if there's any way around it. I think it has to be assessed. If you want to argue something, you know, the number of days or the amount or the change orders maybe weren't the appropriate amount, I'm willing to work with you on it, Tom, but I don't know if there's any room for working with on this. I mean, just because it didn't get done and just because it came up to more than you thought, I don't see any way around it.
Well, as I discussed with you though, too, those liquidated damages, you know, are all subjective. You know, it ain't just cut and dried. I've been in this business 25 years. Like I told you, 15 years ago, they didn't even charge liquidated damages. Until the
Okay.
guys started screwing up, they would get a job and they wouldn't stay on the job. They'd pull off and then they'd come back, you know. So then they say, well, we're gonna have to penalize you if you don't show up for work. We were there every day. I don't know, maybe the job was just too overwhelming. I don't. You know, and I had good guys, like I told you, my youngest guy on that job was 35 years old. My oldest guy is 77 years old.
Okay, it's subjective, but what's subjective? The number of days or the amount?
Yeah, the amount.
And that was in the contract. Everybody would have to comply with that. I mean, we can't just go, well, all right, well, now that we have the contract and it went over, now we can charge less. I mean, we gotta stick with that, I think.
Well, we've incurred, what, $2,200 to redo the loan. This redoing the Moody and redoing the bonds is not, this is not, I mean, we're, the county's actually.
I'm willing to pay that. I'm willing to pay that. You know, I gotta survive, I gotta live, and this might force me into bankruptcy before it's all over with. I'm not saying that it will, but, you know, these guys are gonna want their money. This whole list right here that I just told you about. And I done put them off for, this will be the second month, going on the third one. Because I told them I didn't get my last check. Y'all held my last check. I couldn't pay them that. I had to go to the bank and borrow the labor money. I can back up every one of these numbers that I got here. I mean,
Well, the reason that we put liquidated damages in, and you might not call it a damage, you might call it a penalty for non-completion, but, I mean, you know, we needed it done by a certain date. That date was December 2nd. We gave you 4 more months to complete it.
and we thought we could get it done. You know, I'm sure that you've had jobs that you've started.
Never.
Never have.
Nope.
That, I mean, you've told a guy, I'm gonna fix your yard out here and we'll have it all done.
If it rained, Tom, yeah, if it rained, but you know, I've had jobs where they've added a ton more work and I've given you 1 more day. I worked on the high school stadium, you know, ton more work, no more days, get it done. You know what? You hire more people, you do it yourself, I don't know what it is, but, you know, I feel for you, but at the same time, I mean, I think these damages are what needs to be charged, and so that's where I'm at. 54 days, $750 a day, and, you know, that's just where I'm at, so.
I mean, I gotta agree. I mean, even we talked this morning, even talking now, Tom, there's, the numbers I'm using, there's nothing that has given me any reason to change them. The 54, the 750, you know, even if the change orders weren't the appropriate amounts, we could look at that, but it is what it is there, so.
I agree. I think it's,
Can I do community service?
Sure.
I'll work it all. Y'all got work up here to do? You know, I'll work for Eric or whatever. I gotta get the money somewhere. I know you got work out there.
Tom, there's no way we can do that. I mean, I understand where you're coming from on the community service thing, but contractually, we can't do that. That's, well, can't look into that. As far as liquidated damages, I've been in doing this work for 21 years, and every job I've been on prior to being here and here, there's been liquidated damages as part of the project. Always been everything that we've bid, every project we've done at the county. Really just comes down to, was the dollar amount appropriate per day, I think.
Yeah, and Jeff's right, if we make an exception with you, every contract in the future, it's gonna come back and just bite us in the butt.
We use,
I'm gonna check them too.
we use the Missouri Department of Transportation guidelines for damages, and it's assessed based on dollar amounts per the contract. A lot of historical data goes into figuring those amounts. Just so you know, and the commission knows, normally that for this contract range, it was $700 a day. I added 50 to that because we were at the time, and we still are, it's getting more serious now.
Yeah.
The completion date for turning this NID thing around and getting it to be assessed on the property owner's taxes for next year. And so that was the reason for the additional $50. So if you wanted to look at that, you know, as something that was added to what would be charged normally in a normal contractual arrangement like this, you could take the $50. But that doesn't add up to a whole lot of money, I don't think.
I move that we approve final change order number 1, closeout for Parkview Meadows Neighborhood Improvement District.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty.
Does that mean I lost?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom, but
Well, it's a bunch of,
do we have anything else before we go into closed session?
We got one more budget adjustment, or did we do all?
We did all those.
Okay, you did number 4 a while ago. Okay, I didn't know if you went back, I'm sorry. Did you all get the email about Kern Shield Drive or
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah.
And, you know anything about that?
Okay. Okay.
We're getting ready to chip seal that, and we were doing some prep work, some repair work to get that ready, so I guess it just had to do with that.
So it just wasn't done, finished product, or? Okay, never mind. Just being taken care of.
It's done.
Okay,
All right.
yeah,
Just wanted to make sure.
thank you. I was gonna-
The only thing I had is the budget calendar and the process for 2018. I sent you guys an email on some of the dates. I just want to make sure that you want to either have the opportunity for the department heads to come to you in a meeting before they turn the budget over to the auditor. And that was what we had scheduled for August the 22nd. If you still want to be able to see that or have the department heads come talk to you about their request before it goes to the auditor, we've done it both ways. We've let
I'd say
them-
if they got something in there that's totally different and they want to meet with us,
Yeah,
then I'm fine. Otherwise, I don't know if we need to waste their time or not. I mean, don't schedule a meeting just to have a meeting.
What
But
you
if,
said in there is only if the department is asking for substantial changes from the 2017. If that's still what you want to do for that meeting.
I'm fine with that, because that sounds like what I just said, right?
yeah.
So I know department heads are just wanting to know when they have to have it to us. before then. They all know they have to have it to the auditor by September 1. So whenever you guys get a chance, look at that calendar schedule and let me know, so we can go ahead and get that on the.
What are we supposed to look at? Make sure we're available those days?
Yes,
Yeah,
especially the
put-
ones highlighted in the.
That's where I might go, yeah.
Did you say September 1st?
Yeah. that budget is due for the auditor.
When did you email those out?
Just yesterday.
Yeah, I got it.
I know you don't like paper. but it's hard.
Do you want it? I'm gonna throw, I found the email, I was just trying to find it without having to search through the.
Has Melody got all these on the calendar? or
Not yet, no,
okay.
I was just
Okay.
waiting to hear from you guys before we put it all on the calendar.
We got BOE coming up this
Yeah,
week,
we
or?
do.
Next Monday.
Next week, Monday, and then next following.
Let's see.
Is that on the calendar?
Yes.
Yeah. It's 8:30 to noon.
And then I think she's
Yeah.
got it locked off. I don't really know how many.
Do we have several?
Yeah, it's all commercial.
It's all commercial. I know the last time I asked Dawn, there was like 5, but they were all
There's,
commercial.
yeah, well, there's more than that now, I think.
Is there?
Yeah.
So you're saying the 24th?
No.
24th and 31st.
I think them dates are all,
Just under commission. Okay.
I try to keep them on the Tuesdays, most of the days are on the Tuesday.
I don't know, I'll take a look at this and let you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine, that's all I have.
Okay, me.
So what do we got for closed sessions?
Security and legal. Yeah.
What's the legal action?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. All right, you guys good?
Yep.
yeah.
May we go into closed session pursuant to section 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri for security issues sub 19 and legal issues sub 1.
Second.
Roll call?
Sam?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, how many red markers do you need? I do a lot of